To begin with, I live in Los Angeles, California, in the Valley. My house is a very unsettling place. Ever since I can remember, there have been unusual going-ons and oddities. The history of the house is this. The house was built in the late 50s in the Hollywood Hills, somewhere or other. I'm not quite sure. But it was eventually moved for some reason to the Valley in the early 60s, at which point my grandfather bought the house at an amazingly reasonable price for such a then luxurious and beautiful house. My family moved in, and they've lived there since. Now begins the second part of my story. When my grandfather was nearing the end of his life, he began to see things, namely my grandmother, whom he had divorced decades earlier and who had died about 3 years earlier, and a small girl who he would become agitated at the sight of and wave away, saying things like "get away, you're gone," and the like. It was very unsettling, as I said. He, however, was not alone in his unusual experience in the house, as well as my aunt and father, who've also experienced oddities here as well. And nearly all of my friends who have stayed the night, and most significantly, me. My aunt has heard voices here when she was younger, and has seen a man out of the corner of her eye, standing at the corner of her bed, watching her. She also said that this caused her to have difficulty in breathing on occasion. My father is another story altogether, but I'm unsure as to his reliability, as he is quite frankly bipolar and schizophrenic. But several years ago, after my grandmother died in '64, he went quite insane and said that a thing in his room told him to hurt himself. I would otherwise discount this as part of his psychosis or mania, but after that happened, I came into the possession of the house as part of my inheritance from my grandfather, and when I first moved in, as there was hardly any furniture and I was staying there, I had to stay at his old room at the end of the hallway. There are no windows, and the only illumination is from a wall torch here, precisely in the middle of the hall, which will play in later oddities. When I lay down in there with my dog to rest a little bit on the mattress, which had previously been his, I felt decidedly unpleasant, as if I were being watched, but was suddenly so tired that I immediately fell asleep. I woke up later in a cold sweat, and my dog was huddled in the corner, whimpering and watching the ceiling in the diagonally opposite corner of the room, and seemed very frightened. The unpleasant feeling of being watched had greatly increased, and I left the room as hastily as I possibly could. When I had first moved in, about a week after the oddness with my dog, and before I could move over my bed from my previous residence, I'd moved over my father's bed from his old corner room and begun to sleep upon it. Things were fine for about a month or so, until one night, I awoke to see the silhouette of a tallish man standing in the doorway to my bathroom. There is a bathroom attached to my bedroom, and a door leading out from the bathroom into the entrance hall by the front door. The man was standing with his arms slightly bowed, and head lowered with shoulders tense, and seemed angry for some reason, very angry. The man pointed at me, and I blinked, and he disappeared. What was even more disturbing about it was that the man appeared to be composed entirely of shadow, as if the brightest light possible were shining behind him, while the lighting behind him was just as it always is, as at that time, I usually left the entrance hall light on for anyone coming home late, and the light in my bathroom was on, which was directly flush with the man. Even more disturbing was that after I blinked, the man was gone, and when I looked to investigate, the door was once more closed, but the door was unlocked, which it never was, and the light in the bathroom was still on, which it also never was. I made a thorough search of my room, and it was completely sealed, and there was no possible way for what happened to have happened. About a day or two later, and this is the weirdest, most terrifying part, and the most horrific, I was laying in bed, the one my father had shot himself on after my grandmother had died, although he did not die of it. Hands began to form out of the mattress and massage my body. At first I thought it was a dream, as it was so absurd, but did not feel bad and was actually soothing, until the hands began to gouge and claw at me, trying to pull me into the bed, at which point I began to shriek and jumped out and off of the bed and watched as the hands very silently melted, almost back into the mattress. My body hurt very much, and I went to observe myself in the full-length mirror, which my grandfather had hung upon the door between my room and my bathroom, which had been his. He was a short man though, so I don't believe the Shadow Man had anything to do with it. And I noticed that my entire body, from ankles to just below my neck, was covered in glass, as if I'd been scratched all over as well, and many were bleeding, although not profusely. I ran out of the room and did not sleep the rest of the evening, and in the morning removed both bed and frame and put them in the trash and on the curb. After this, I began to have nightmares in which a massive presence chased me through the rooms of places in which I'd previously lived, or I would be in a normalish dream. I'm presuming that they were normal because I had never had a real dream, only nightmares, and that I would sense something approaching, even through the walls of the buildings in the dreams, and then it would appear and rush at me and attack by grabbing me by the neck and throttling me, and though it did not speak or even make sound or have form, I could see it as if it did, and it had the form of a large human-like thing. It could taunt me as if I could hear its thoughts. It strangled me and lifted my feet off of the ground and prevented me from calling out or even making sound, and I would struggle until I finally awoke. Many of the times I would awaken to find large handprints upon my neck, larger even than my hands. The worst of the strangulation dreams was one set in my back hallway. In the dream, I was walking about the house and heard something frying in the kitchen like eggs, and when I went in there, eggs were on the stove, and I felt such an inexplicable horror. After I went into the kitchen, I heard my dog whimpering in distress and ran to the sound and found her in the back hallway, and she was being held up by the throat and throttled as I had been before. I ran over shouting at the shadow thing and threw myself at it to force it to release my dog, and she was thrown back against the corner of the side hall, which leads to the other bathroom of the master bedroom, and laid unconscious, at which it began to throttle me until I managed to shout out God and was dropped, and awoke immediately to find my neck was severely sore and with bruising all over it. When I went to check on my dog, she was whimpering, and my mother could not figure out why she had suddenly began to whimper in the middle of the night. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was kind of wild, but there are definitely shadow presences in this home, and they are really torturous. I hope nobody ever gets to experience what I experienced, but hey, it makes for a great story.
Being a kid from a large single-parent family, we moved around a lot. One of these homes was on 1864 Robinson. We were poor. My mom tried hard to give us the things we needed, but she had no help. My two younger brothers and I used to share a room and a bed together. We used to sleep upstairs in a large room, just opposite the bathroom on the south side of the house. It had a large window, with no curtains or coverings, so the streetlights used to shine through at night. At the end of the room was a closet that had no door. We rarely used it. One night, I was awakened by a large blue light coming from outside the room. I thought it was from the bathroom, but it was an intense blue and seemed to grow brighter and brighter. The door to our room was partly open, and all of a sudden, a young boy was standing in the doorway. He stood there, looking at me. I was frozen with fear. I tried to yell, but nothing came out. He was bathed in a blue light that, to this day, I have yet to experience again. He floated above the floor. He moved slowly towards me, gliding on air. He then floated along the wall, away from us to the closet. He stopped, turned, and floated in, the light disappearing. I couldn't move. I tried and tried. Finally, I slid off the bed and crawled to the stairs. I tried to walk down, but my legs gave way and I fell. My mom awoke and rushed to see what happened. She held me as I told her. She put me in her room and went and got my brothers. No one ever went in that room again. I used to go by there from time to time, until one day I went, and there now was a new home built there. Makes me wonder if anything strange ever happens to them. I have 3 stories to share. The first is an experience I had 20 years ago. My aunt, who lived with us, passed away. When she was alive, she would go out and get a snack around the same time every night. After her funeral, every night at about the same time, the refrigerator door would open and close. This went on for a couple of weeks, then stopped. Every so often, I still get a whiff of her perfume, as if she just walked past me. The second was experienced by both me and my daughter. She was very close to her grandfather her entire life. He passed away in 2000, shortly before the birth of her first child. Shortly after his passing, my daughter said in the middle of the night she would feel someone sit on the corner of her bed. When she would turn to look, no one was there. This was something her grandfather had done when she was little. After the baby was born, my daughter started noticing other strange things. The baby would turn her head, as if watching someone walking across the room, but no one was there. One night, she was holding the baby, and the baby was staring at what, to my daughter, was a blank wall and laughing. My daughter looked at the baby, and there was a reflection of the figure of a man, as if he were standing exactly where the baby was looking. Several times when I was babysitting at my daughter's house, the baby's musical toys would turn on by themselves, with no one close to them. And the baby would stare at that wall and laugh, as if someone was standing there. My daughter doesn't live in the house any longer, and the strange things seem to have stopped. The third is the strangest of all. My son and some of his friends went to an abandoned house that is supposedly haunted. The story is that a man killed his entire family in the house and then himself. There are bullet holes in the walls in the upstairs to support the story. Finding nothing of interest upstairs or on the main floor, they decided to investigate the basement. They found a partial wall at the end of the basement. They noticed a terrible odor coming from that area of the room. They looked over the top of the wall and found nothing but some old boots and a shovel. When they went back to go upstairs to the main floor, there was wet blood on the stairs. It had not been there on the way down. They nosed around on the main floor again and found some money tucked in a broken TV set. There was blood on the money too, but it was dried. Each person took a bill home with them. They all started to have extremely bad luck. Car accidents and such. They thought it might be connected to the money, so they took it back and placed it where they found it. The bad luck went away. They checked the basement again, but nothing was there. Others say you can drive past the house and see lights on in the windows, even though there are no working lights, and there is no power to the house. Some say they've seen the figure of a child or a lady in one of the bedroom windows. My son and his friends have not been back since, and my son refuses to even drive past the house anymore. Growing up as a minister's daughter, I was very skeptical about ghosts all my life. Then I went to a small private college in Tennessee. My first year was pretty uneventful, but the second year I moved into a new dorm. My room was a suite of 2 rooms with a bathroom in between, and my former roommate lived in the other room. The first year in the suite there was only one occurrence of what I now think was a supernatural event. Normally, the doors between the 2 suites were kept shut. But one weekend, the girls on the other side of the suite asked my roommate and I to feed their hermit crabs while they went home. They had been gone for a day when my roommate and I came by to our dorm from lunch to find every single electrical appliance running, including the microwave, radio, and hair dryers. We had left the door to the adjoining suite open, but as we assumed it was just some silly call to prove it was there, it did. We had all been in the bedroom, and after our conference, we all went into the living area together. A huge stuffed bear that had been on its usual place on the floor when I had left the room earlier was now sprawled across the couch. Of course, we were pretty scared then. The pranks became worse. Wet towels no one had used would be on the bathroom floor. Breezes coming from nowhere would move the dust ruffles on the bed. Things would be taken out of drawers and left on the floor. On homecoming weekend, I was the only one who had stayed in town. I was in the suite alone, taking a shower, when I heard someone unlock and open the door to the living area and walk in. I heard high-heel shoes walk across the floor, through the bathroom, and through the other room and walk out the bedroom door. I thought at first that it was one of my roommates who decided to come home to homecoming after all, and I called out, "Hello?" But no one answered. The only other experience I have had is at the house in Vermont where Joe Walsh used to live. My husband's uncle is the caretaker there, and shortly after I met my husband, he took me up there to look at the house. I had not been told of any ghost stories connected to the house at this point. As we walked around the house, I became increasingly agitated. By the time we were upstairs, I was having trouble breathing. As we started toward the ballroom, I knew I had to get out fast. I was terrified and sensed just an overpowering feeling of evil there. I raced out, and I refused to even look at the house anymore. Later that day, my husband's uncle told me about all the different stories and encounters people have reported about the house. A man had hung himself in the very room that I had trouble breathing in. And at night, the uncle heard sound of people and objects moving frequently. I am now a true believer in ghosts, but I am also terrified of them, and I hope these are all the experiences that I will ever have.
Hey, Phantoms! First of all, I'd like to thank you all for listening to my first Scary Story Ghost video of 2020. I hope that this year brings you a lot of joy and happiness, and I hope that everything that you've accomplished so far in your life gets even better. And I hope good fortune and all that stuff. Anyway, guys, thank you so much again for listening. I don't know if I even said that. My memory is so bad. I just forgot what I just said, but let's take the moment to actually share this video all around social media and make sure that you like this video and comment on it and let me know how you're doing, which stories that you like the most. Seriously, it's a big help when you guys can actually share this video because YouTube apparently doesn't actually send you notifications enough. They don't actually recommend the videos enough, so please do that. I would appreciate it so much. Lastly, thank you so much, Dismal Hero, for actually lending his voice and appearing in this video. If you'd like to support him, I'm going to leave his links to his channels down below. He has a narration channel, and even cooler, he's got a channel where he actually explores abandoned sites and buildings and all those things. So if you like that particular genre, go ahead and actually subscribe to that channel as well. He really would appreciate it, and I think it's a really, really cool channel myself. His film quality, his high production values are really top notch, so please support the channel, tell him I sent you, and yeah, that's it. So guys, I'm going to leave you with this and say bye. So hopefully you guys loved the stories and enjoyed the video, but I'm going to leave because I don't know what I'm talking about at this point, which I never do, but love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video, and Happy New Year.